Alright, so, like 3 people already know. uh, Today was a hard one. Um, so I decided to go hiking before work. I decided to, um, drive up to the top of Beauty Bay, which, when you get to the very top, there's a T. If you go left, it takes you to the 4th of July Pass. If you go right, it turns into um, like there's a metal gate on the door, or on the not on the door. There's a metal gate blocking the road, and then it's Kelly Hump just past that. Um, so I decided to park at the gate, and the idea, and as soon as I got out of my car and pack on and everything, um, was I set my timer for 3 o'clock, which would have been a little over an hour from that point. And to remind me that I walked far enough and then I need time to walk back to my car so I can drive to work because I was supposed to be there at 5 o'clock. Okay, so a couple years ago, I got lost with a friend Liz up down in the bottom because the trails are not completely marked, not marked well, I should say. But so I already knew, and I'd only done it once, that if I went this route, that the trail would in fact loop around, but I had no intention of doing that. I'm only saying that to, you know, point out that I knew where I was going, at least from up top. So, I get walking, and I'm taking pictures, as you know that I love to do, and and I got some really good pictures, and I veered off of the road onto a different trail, which I knew as the one that Liz and I came out on when we got lost and we came out there on accident. So I had a general idea where that trail went, and I had no intention of leaving the ridgetop. Okay. So I go that way for a while. I'm not really sure how much time has elapsed. Um, in my videos that I'll be posting soon, it was I had general ideas of what time it was when I was marking the videos. Okay. So I'm walking and I get that sense of dread, though one that I know very well, and I was alone. So I stopped and I listened, and dead silence. And then I heard rustling. At one point, as I'm walking, I looked behind me, and cresting the corner, I don't know how many feet behind me, it was a ways, I saw a mountain lion's head stick out. And the first thing I did was yell, yell, yell. Make myself bigger than, what you're supposed to do. And it retreated. I figured that was the end of it. So I kept walking. And I don't know how much time later, I got that feeling again. I turned around and the cat head was peeking around the corner. I had not scared it off. And so I kept walking. After making more noise, I kept walking. And I was really aware now that it was following me. Um, I was kind of hoping it was just a matter of being on that trail that the game uses a lot. But that was not the case. Um, so I get to an overlook and I have to pee. So I'm standing on this overlook. It's a good, I'm gonna say probably that steep, and I'm taking a piss, and I hear, and I turn just in time to see that mountain lion running at me full speed. So, bear mace in one hand, dick in the other, I let out the most guttural, loud, uh, Bigfoot yell. I didn't mean to do a Bigfoot yell. That's just how it came out. It came out as a Bigfoot yell. And if it had gotten just, oh, hold on, that mountain lion got close enough, running at me, like 5, maybe 6 more feet, and I'd have been pissing on it. But it stopped in its tracks when I did that. However, I also simultaneously took a step back, and that was instinctual, and I stepped right off the ledge. I took a tumble, a pretty hard one. But you know what? On this note, if you're going to have any sort of outdoors training or life training, I would personally recommend that you learn how to take a fall. Something that I've mastered over the years because I'm clumsy as fuck, but so I tumbled down the hill. I'm not really sure how far I tumbled. I landed on a game trail and I stopped. My arms are a little bit scratched up, like on the surface, mostly from the dry skin, because it was just weeds that I rolled over. I'm really lucky I didn't hit any rocks or branches or stumps or trees, so we'll just call that lucky. So I get to the bottom, and I immediately got up and gained my composure because I figured it wasn't over yet. And I looked up to see this mountain lion looking over the ledge. And then it disappeared. I immediately, not immediately, I took a moment to try to get my bearings, but I had no view at that point at all. So I took a gamble, and I took the downward sloping side of that game trail, and it connected to another trail. So I get down to this game trail, and that feeling comes right back. There was already a feeling of dread and already a feeling of adrenaline, but that feeling from before came back. And I kept looking behind me, and periodically I would see it peeking its head around the bends, or it would be crouched down. I didn't manage to get pictures of it. I was a little bit more concerned with survival at that point. I did do some videos on my way out, but no luck, as far as I can tell. So the trail systems in the bottom of where I went are poorly marked at best. Okay, so I had to sort of take some educated guesses as to which way to go, and that shows in some of the videos too. But the entire time, it was behind me. It followed me the entire way. I'm kind of assuming that it thought I was an injured animal and that I would be easy pickings if I managed to fall on my own or set down or whatever, that it would be able to gain ground on me, and that would have been that. That would have been that. I had bear mace, and as I felt like he was creeping a little too close for comfort, there were 2 instances in which I sprayed the bear mace across the trail. Especially on the weeds and stuff that were sticking out. That did not deter it as much as I was hoping it would have. Also, when I was nearing the bottom of the area in the dirt, and I mentioned this in a video, right as I stepped into it, I noticed a fresh bear paw print. And I debated over whether I was going to give it a couple minutes, but I figured the threat behind me was a little more immediate than, and I just made loud noises as I went. So finally, I get to a point where I recognize a trail number. And I did my best to follow it, but like I said, poorly marked. So it was kind of a gamble on where I was going to be actually coming out with. But I knew that if I went left, at the very least, that I would eventually either hit the bottom and run into the stream or creek that I knew was there, or I would eventually connect to something that would take me to a place that I recognized, because I knew that the trails out were all in that direction, because backtracking was out of the question. I had no signal since I had been at the very top of the ridgeline. Calling somebody was completely out of the question. The best thing I could think to do is to type in a text to my dad, telling him where I was pretty confident I was and what was happening. And I knew that as soon as I hit a signal somewhere, because my phone was in my pocket, that it would send those messages automatically. I might not ever even know that I had a signal to begin with. So I get to the bottom, I know where I'm at. And I start hiking out the other side. I've been down the other side of this trail several times. I was familiar with this end of the trail, very familiar. And it was only a matter of minutes before I was able to get to the bottom of the uphill climb that I knew was going to be a pain in the ass. And then, I started climbing. And through the entire bit, also to the bottom, that cat was definitely behind me. So I start to climb, and unbeknownst to me, the text had been sent out. As I'm climbing, I'm probably about halfway up the trail. My work calls, and my friend Antonia calls. They all knew that if I hadn't showed up for my shift, and that and I didn't call, that something was seriously wrong, because I would have done one or the other, and I would have let them in the loop. There'd be no debating it. So she calls, and surprisingly, she calls, and the phone rings up, obviously. So I was shocked I had gotten a signal, so I tried to get as much information out quickly before that signal was lost. So I managed to tell her that I had been lost, and that I had fell, and that I was being stalked by mountain lion, and I think I started to get to the trail name, and it cut out. And I could not get a signal again until I was almost to the top. Well, luckily, again, they know me well. My boss and Antonia and my dad had all called 911 to tell him what was happening, and my dad was the only one that really knew for sure, like, where I really was. And so a couple of minutes later, 911 pings my phone and calls me, and I'm explaining to her, like, what had been happening as I'm climbing because I couldn't stop. And she stayed on the phone with me until I was all the way up to the road and I could walk back to where my car was. She was on the phone with me all the way up to my car. And as I was walking the dirt road to the car, which is pretty wide, it's a pretty wide dirt road, heavily traveled, I noticed the cat was still back there. As I got out onto the road and I started walking, I was probably a third of the way to the car on the road when I had seen it come off the trail. And so I had just enough time to get around a bend, and as soon as I was sure it could not see me anymore, I did my best to run. Because you don't run if it can see you, you don't run. Otherwise you're prey. And so I got as far as I could with my hip hurting the way it was, and the adrenaline was still there, but it was definitely wearing off. And I got all the way back to my car while on the phone with dispatch, yelling at this cat over and over again as I'm going. And I finally get into the car in which I can get off the phone with dispatch, just in time to see that big cat about 100 yards away. I started the car, I chugged what little bit of water I had left, and flew that bitch into reverse and got out of there. And I warned the people on the way down, I warned the campground people, and I do believe they also contacted the ranger station. So, I am a little bit banged up in the hip. The scratches aren't too bad. That's a lot for my brain to process. Because I'm 100% sure I was that close to dying in a way that I do not want to die. I can imagine being mauled is probably one of the worst. So, yeah, I'm shook. The adrenaline is finally starting to wear off. And now I'm starting to just feel the aches and pains and the tired, and I won't be I won't be hiking in that area anymore. At the very least, not without like 3 people. I do not want to have to be in that boat again. It was really scary, and more than once I thought, all right, so this is gonna hurt a lot, but it didn't, and I got out, and I was safe. And thank you to my dad and to Antonia and to my boss Maddie for being able to recognize that something was wrong when I didn't show up and call the proper authorities. So this whole experience took place over like, I don't know, 5 hours or so. So yeah, that's the story. Learn how to take a fall, people. And yeah.